Hi, I'm Susie Larson. Thank you for listening to Susie Larson Live. Faith Radio podcasts are only possible because of your support. So thanks for giving, and thanks for sharing with a friend.
It's only just a matter of It's only just a matter of time. Sing, so the back row is your glide. 'Cause walking just won't do dance. You don't have to know how to. Ever since grace got you.
Welcome to Susie Larson Live. Always so honored to get to spend this time with you. In fact, I look forward to bringing you conversations every single day that hopefully inspire you in your faith walk, that deepen your understanding of God's Word, and that heightens your awareness of His very real presence in your life. Well, if you listen often enough, you know we have our good friend Dr. Troy Spurrill on the show once a month to talk about health and the healing process. And we always kick off the show with a topic, and we're going to take the kind of time we need. We're going to talk about hormones today, both for men and women. But we also love questions. And in the past, it's been where the texts start coming in towards the back half of the show, and then we can't even come close to getting to all those questions. So start your questions now, and we're going to do our best to tackle as many as we can. But I do want to take some time because this is a broad topic that applies to everybody. All right. So here's the number if you want to text your question, 877-933-2484. And Tina's so funny. Hello, docs. This is a good way. If you want your question answered, start the text that way. I'm just kidding. So we're talking about hormones. Again, this isn't just a woman's conversation. Men have hormonal imbalances that need to be addressed as well. So some of the questions we'll answer: how connected is hormonal imbalance to cardiovascular issue? How connected to hormones is weight gain? What other systems in our body are affected by hormones when they're out of whack? And what are some of the symptoms in men and symptoms in women that hormones might be out of balance, and what should we do about it? We'll get Dr. Troy on in a moment. I got a couple quick announcements here. If you're new to faith and you've got questions about what it means to follow Jesus, we'd love to help you, walk with you. You can text the word faith to 41224 to get some of your questions answered. And this will be one of the last times you hear about this promotion. It'll be living on for a while. But if you've got loved ones you've been praying for years and they've not turned to Jesus yet, or you got a prodigal who's wandered from the faith, I recorded 15 audio messages. They're about 2 to 3 minutes long, and we're hearing so many testimonies about those audio texts. They're free. You just got to text the word heart to 877-933-2484. You get a couple a week for the next several weeks, and they're on taking care of your soul, forgiving the person that you love that's no doubt broke your heart, remembering your identity is still intact when they're breaking your heart, things like that. You can text the word heart to 877-933-2484. Now, just a quick reminder, Dr. Troy isn't here to give medical advice over the air. You always want to see your doctor for any changes to your health program. We do these shows to provide a big picture, preventative approach to health, and every step towards healing and wholeness matters. Now, let me tell you about my guest. We'll get him on the show. Dr. Troy Spurrill is founder and CEO of Synapse Center for Health and Healing, located in Eagan, Minnesota. He started Synapse over 26 years ago with a vision to bring an integrative approach to healthcare through functional medicine, making Synapse an internationally known center for true health. Dr. Troy, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure. Glad to be here.
All right. So what's God been talking to you about these days?
Well, I'm doing a deep dive in Matthew, and I was rewatching one of the episodes of The Chosen, and that always, certain scenes always get me, and I like to rewatch them. But I was watching just some of the Sermon on the Mount and a few other parts of that episode. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Matthew 5:5, and then I'm going to talk about hormones and our immune system. So Matthew 5:5, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. It's a short one, a short part of that entire message. But for whatever reason, that word meek really bothered me. I don't know if this is true for other people, but
because you thought it meant weak.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so and the definition is like quiet, gentle, submissive, or weak. But it also means patient during affliction. And when you put it in the perspective of what Jesus is talking about, being submissive, non-confrontational, and patient, it takes on a completely different perspective. when it comes to life and living life, I've always, especially doing what I do, I've always like wanted to be strong, wanted to be um, not aggressive, but just like in charge and large and in charge. But the reality is, I get that now. It was like a breakthrough happened for me, and it was after watching The Chosen, and then going back into Matthew, and then rewatching that part of the episode, and then going back into the entire chapter of Matthew, and it was just really really good to lean into that because I talk a lot about how we need to surrender um, a lot of who we are to truly receive. And I get it now. I get the submissive part of it, and I understand why we're just going to be on our knees and just His glory is going to be so much to overwhelm us. I get it. I understand it, and so it doesn't bother me anymore, Susie. So that's good.
That's so great. That's really amazing. I've always said that humility is harnessed strength. That's part of it anyway, where, Jesus knew that his equality with God was not something to be grasped. He could have leveraged it at any time and he didn't. I would put meekness in that same
Yes.
venue, that it's harnessed strength, that it's not weakness. It's not, I'm nothing. It's, apart from Christ, I can do nothing, but in him, I can even walk meekly and trust him to defend and deliver me. I don't need you to know who I am because I know who I am. And I think
Yep.
that's a powerful virtue, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and
Mm,
it's a component to humility, like you said, that just makes life better, actually. So
yeah,
I
so
understand the
good.
inheriting of the earth, what that actually means and looks like when you start to display that,
Yeah.
what that could actually be. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I mean, think about how, we destroy the earth, so to speak, as we grab for ourselves. We grab for ourselves, but to surrender and submit ourselves to God over and over again, he can entrust so much more to us. So, wow, that's beautiful. All right, so we're starting with the basics. What are hormones and why should we care?
Well, hormones actually, I'm going to say it this way. So, just like we're talking about Matthew 5:5, if there's inner conflict, if there's a lie we believe about ourselves or anything that's untrue, even if it's 99% true with 1 ounce or 1% of a lie, when we're in conflict, it's our hormones that get triggered, that get initiated. And our hormones are another way that our body communicates within the body. So it's really another language. And so our hormones are basically communicating a lot. They communicate feelings, they communicate to our immune system whether it should turn on or turn off. It communicates to our immune system whether it should clean things up or leave it alone. It communicates when we should feel hungry or not hungry. So they're really important for just uh, understanding how the body works. And when you're talking about your like just knowing your identity, knowing who you are, the hormones actually play a big role into that. So because you can put anyone who feels any sense of just stability and normal, mess with their hormones, and they will not say they feel normal or anything good.
Wow. Wow. I read this online and forgive me, I didn't remember to grab the credit, but I was just researching different definitions of hormones and descriptions. And this one said there are many bodily processes that hormones play a role in, including your metabolism, mood, sexual function, sleep cycle. They are a pivotal part of homeostasis. And homeostasis is your body's way of maintaining internal balance. This includes blood pressure, blood sugar regulation, fluid retention, body temp, electrolyte balance. Bodily processes often involve more than one hormone, sometimes called a chain reaction. Hunger is controlled by hormones, as well as your emotions. Some hormones even function as neurotransmitters, which relay messages from your brain to your muscles, for example. So when people kind of bash on hormones, they hate their hormones. We need hormones to function in our lives. It's just a matter of addressing if they're out of whack or not, right?
Yep, absolutely. And it's not about being high or low. For example, if you have low progesterone, your immune system will flare and not be regulated properly. So if you have an autoimmune, low progesterone means that your autoimmune disorder, which is a confused immune system of sorts, will flare. that's why a lot of women who actually have autoimmune, when they get pregnant, sometimes their autoimmune symptoms go away
Mm,
because of the change in the hormones. But in the same light, if you don't have an autoimmune and you have low progesterone, you're going to be more susceptible to chronic infections, bacterial infections, yeast infections, different types of low grade colds, flus, just from low progesterone. And same is true for estrogen. A lot of women in menopause who weren't making enough estrogen did not do well with things like COVID or the flu. So when you get your hormones balanced, it really helps you with a lot of those nagging different infections. And so one of the things to actually look for is, if you're chronically getting infections, is whether or not your hormones are high or low. And the hormone cortisol has the exact opposite response. If it's high, because cortisol is an anti-inflammatory, your inflammation can become problematic. But chronic cortisol will then cause the immune regulation issues. So hormones can be very, very confusing sometimes. But keeping them in balance is really, really important.
mm. All right, so let's start with men. What are some signs that a man's hormones might be out of balance?
If he disagrees with his wife.
There you go.
No,
You, you need a patch.
no, no,
I'm just kidding.
that is or the most common one for men is basically if their energy is a little bit low physically, then testosterone can be a little bit low. The number one hormone that tends to be off in men is vitamin D. And so
Mm,
vitamin D is a hormone. So that helps with the
wow.
immune system. And so that is the number one. But number two is almost always cortisol, a stress hormone that goes up. And then you start to see things like insulin resistance. You start to see sugar cravings. And so that is the even more common because testosterone really doesn't get depleted uh, in men until you have like a lifestyle scenario. So it really is very, very common for guys if they're starting to gain some weight around the midsection, if they're starting to just gain weight in general, if their energy is low, sexual drive or not, just their get up and go is just not there, is also a sign either cortisol, insulin, or testosterone is very, very low. Sexual function, of course, too, is a good indicator of potential hormone imbalance or too much stress.
Low motivation. So, would you say a easy start for men? I mean, everybody needs vitamin D, right? I mean, would
Yeah.
that be an easy start for men? Is to start with some vitamin D if you're not taking any?
Yeah, and for guys in particular, because of the way their hormones are set up, probably close to 80% of men just being outside in the sun doing physical labor is actually very, very life-giving for their hormones, especially insulin and testosterone and vitamin D for the sun.
Hmm. Wow. And so, if men are low T, how do you, first of all, let me ask you this. What's the best lab for testing a man's hormones? And is there an age where you should start keeping an eye on those levels?
Well, the funny thing is it used to be really above the age of 50 and you'd start
Now it's
looking at
30.
low T. Now we're seeing guys in their 20s with what
Wow.
men in their 50s used to get. And
Wow. Why?
part of that is energy drinks.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
caffeinated energy. I want you to think about this. How much has caffeinated energy drinks increased in the last 20 years? Significant. When I was
Yeah.
growing up, Red Bull wasn't even a thing. And so now we have well over 30 different caffeinated energy drinks that also come with a lot of other sugars and or even if they're loaded with some good vitamins, it's not in balance. And so men are mostly depleting their system early on because of excess caffeine usage.
Wow. You
Yeah.
see, it's just amazing, like the cultural norms, the physiological implications, how they ripple out over time, and then you start to see trends.
Yes.
People will think I'm doing it. I sleep at night, or maybe I don't, but it's my thing to do. But in due time, you start to see something that's been normalized. don't even get me started on cannabis and all that stuff and what that's going to
Yep.
do to people's brains and their work ethic. But we normalize these things. And just because someone says it's okay or it's lawful, it doesn't mean it's profitable. And
No.
wow. So, as we go to break here, is this an easy answer as far as what's the best lab for a man to get to test his hormone levels?
Yeah, it's still a standard blood panel with testosterone, and you still, even the men, you want to get progesterone, estrogen, and something called sex hormone binding globulin. Also good and important to get insulin and cortisol tested. So the last one is DHEA with a little S on the end. DHEA is a hormone that is kind of the precursor to a lot of the other hormones, and when it gets depleted, and we have a saying, stress eats DHEA.
Hmm.
So in the beginning of a stress response, your DHEA will actually be elevated, it'll go high. But then as you start to enter into chronic stress, it becomes depleted. And your body, in order to make more of this hormone, will increase cholesterol. So
Oh, wow.
cholesterol will go up because cholesterol is what is the precursor to DHA, which is the precursor to the other hormones. So it's important to get that DHA in there, and just a general blood panel is a good place to start with that, with the doc that can do something with that.
Okay. When we come back, we'll talk more about hormones. We'll talk about women as well and what are some symptoms. I would imagine treating hormonal imbalances in women is a little bit more varied and complicated. I might be wrong about that. Talking to Dr. Troy, we always have a kickoff topic, and our kickoff topic is hormones. If you've got questions about those, send them in. I see some coming in. I'll read these, but I wanted to make sure I was listening to Troy and not reading your text. But I'll try to do that in a minute and a half break coming up here. Don't go away. More with Dr. Troy in a minute. Hi, I'm Susie Larson, host of Susie Larson Live. I've got a question for you. Do you have a deep desire buried in your heart that you've tucked away and haven't thought about for a long time? I'm daring you to bring it up again. Bring it before the Lord. Put it on the forefront of your mind. Start to pray about it. Talk to a friend about it. Search Scripture because of it. God delights in every detail of your life, and He truly wants to fulfill some of the deepest desires of your heart. Connecting faith to life. Faith Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in to Susie Larson Live. My good friend Dr. Troy Spurrill joins me on the show once a month to talk health and the healing process. And we always have a topic that we kick off the conversation with, and this one is involved, so we're taking the time we need. I see a number of questions coming in regarding hormones. We talked about men and when your hormones are imbalanced, and you tend to hear guys say that's a female topic. It just absolutely isn't. You could have imbalances that cause fatigue, low motivation, low sex drive, anxiety, depression, different things like that. It's really good for you to know what's going on with your hormones. And as Dr. Troy said, in days past, you'd start watching those numbers and levels at age 50. Now they're looking at it in young men age 20 because of energy drinks and the stuff that we're putting in our bodies that have disrupted our basic homeostasis. So let's talk about women. Tina wrote in and said, can thyroid issues come from hormone imbalances? And I'm thinking yes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. A lot of hormone imbalances, estrogen dominance in particular, can disrupt thyroid. So a lot of chemicals from our environment that actually mimic estrogen can disrupt thyroid, but also I do want to just throw this one out here too, because a lot of women do well with flax seeds. Flax seeds are very estrogenic and they can help with a lot of things. But flax seeds is a testosterone killer for guys.
Oh, wow.
Flax seeds will lower testosterone in a lot of men. So it's important that what works for a woman in the shake she takes may not work for guys. And a lot of guys, their testosterone again gets disrupted from estrogens, too much estrogens from the environment. And too much estrogens for women tends to disrupt thyroid. So look at all the testosterone issues we have with guys and look at all the thyroid issues we have with women. So that's a great question because the answer is that with a definitive yes, it can hormones imbalances can cause not just from the hormone itself, but but things that mimic estrogen.
Wow. I want to ask you, what are some common symptoms that women might be out of balance hormonally? But I'm also looking at this text that just came in. I think I'll ask you that first, and then I'll read one of the texts here. So let's say what are some of the common symptoms your hormones might be a little out of whack?
So, retaining water or fluid, hormones can be out of whack. If you have any type of, if you still have your cycle and you're having any type of PMS, it is a sign the hormones are out of balance, or there's a physical uh, uterine tilt that has occurred. But that's not a normal thing. We shouldn't see a huge change or shift in your personality. You shouldn't get headaches during your cycle. You shouldn't have anything that's drastically changing.
Let me
Weight
interject
gain?
there, if
Yeah,
I could. I've heard stories of women becoming a different person around the cycle, and like almost bipolar different, but
yeah.
it's without fail around the cycle. And, they might write it off as it's my period, and others around them are going, it cannot be. So that you should not see that as something that's just normal hormonal fluctuation.
Absolutely. There are some studies that show some investigation on in tribal women that are from the Amazon rainforest and some other areas where they don't even have a word in their language for PMS or even menopause because there isn't a change in their in that they that are that's noticeable from their hormone patterns. So it's the world we're in and have created that plays into that. A lot of different things will interfere with that. So, but it is a definitive sign of hormone imbalance.
Hmm. Here's one that comes from a listener. My understanding is that women's hormones are an important factor to consider when doing intermittent fasting. Do you have any helpful resources or suggestions on how to get started? While intermittent fasting isn't for everyone, I recently learned through muscle testing that my body's asking for essentially a Whole30 plus intermittent fasting. I have no clue where to start on the ladder to be successful. What do you say?
Yeah, there are some good books on intermittent fasting, and it is one of those things too. 25% of the population really shouldn't do intermittent fasting, but it's because your blood sugar drops too low. So the hormones really are more related to blood sugar than anything else. So um, you can do it without a lot of fanfare, just by paying attention to how your body reacts. I'm a huge fan of intermittent fasting, but if you get cranky, if you get that hangry type of scenario, and if you eat something and instantly feel better, then that's a sign that your blood sugar is too low. Or you can get just a glucose monitor and check your blood sugar when you're in intermittent fasting. And so, just picking an 8 hour window of when you're going to eat is the way to start with that. If you want to just start it at the safest time, you take it mid-cycle. When you enter menopause, once women go through menopause, your body still needs to make hormones, estrogen, but the ovaries stop doing it. So that duty falls on the adrenal glands. If you have a sleep disorder or too much stress in your life, or your adrenal glands are working extra because they're releasing cortisol from diet or stress, then all of a sudden your body's going to act as if it just can't make the estrogen. It won't be very good at it. So an extra load goes on there. That is not a good time to to really play with it. And some women need to do intermittent fasting to feel better because the intestinal inflammation helps. And some women, that's actually a stress response. So you just have to pay
Wow.
attention to your body.
Wow. Okay, there's two questions that came in from a gentleman that I feel like we need to answer both of them. We're going to keep on going as best we can, friends. So many questions are coming in, which I so appreciate. This is in relation to you were saying how now the labs need to go to younger men checking hormonal imbalances, that you're seeing more imbalance because of these energy drinks. And he says, in other words, could just a large amount of coffee deplete hormones? What say you?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. If you are drinking a day of caffeinated coffee, the answer is yes. Now, coffee, especially clean organic coffee, has a lot of other benefits to it. So it's not as bad as an energy drink that has a bunch of sugar in it.
Yeah.
So
And you're
sugar
not
and
jolting your system like with the energy
yes.
drink. There's massive amounts of caffeine and sugar. I remember our youngest son. unbeknownst to me, when he was in high school, grabbed one because his buddies had one. And, I don't know if it was before the game, football game, and he almost had a heart attack on the. He had to
Yeah.
come off. He was grabbing his throat. He could barely breathe, and I don't know if it was an AFib thing, but something was going on with his heart. Terrifying. I mean, I can't believe people live on those things. But
Yeah.
anyway, all
Well,
right.
and
Same.
for the most
Go ahead.
part, I will try and reduce people's coffee intake. I think we overconsume
Yeah.
coffee quite a bit. So if you are for me, 1 cup a day is max. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never had a patient where I'm recommending where 2 or 3 cups a day is okay.
So
And
here's the
even
thing.
with that,
Yeah. I was going to say, you experience the law of diminishing returns, the benefits of
yes.
coffee, of clean coffee, because a lot of coffee has mold. You want to get a pure coffee, but you have, cognitive benefits, vasodilator. I mean, there's so many things it does for you, but that's really only found in that first 1 to 2 cups, isn't it? I mean, after
Yeah,
that, you start to
correct.
get
Yeah.
the downside. Okay. All right. So here's another question from the same gentleman. It says, if someone uses flax milk, like myself, on a daily basis, should I be concerned about testosterone being low? Not sure if flax milk is the same as flax seed. What do you say?
Uh, it, I don't know the answer specifically with that because it depends on the flax milk itself. But um, I think the answer is still going to be yes. You should be leery of that. So
Mm.
I'm not 100% sure like the ratio and everything, but it comes from flax. So I just don't think it'll be good for the omega-3 parts of it, but the actual estrogenic effects still could be an issue. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Might be worth switching to almond milk or something, maybe. Huh? No?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to grab one more question before we go to break. This dear one says her husband has slow growing prostate cancer. Any chance there's a possibility this could be from messed up hormones?
Mm, say that again, that first part.
Husband has slow growing prostate cancer. Is there a possibility this could be from messed up hormones?
The answer is yes, but that's usually not the root cause either. So this one's tricky because we've worked with people, and one of my mentors had a very, very high success rate with prostate cancer, and what they did was they balanced the acid and the pH of the body. So hormones are involved with that. I do know that one of the detoxes that we do at the clinic here for BPH or benign prostatic hypertrophy is an environmental estrogen detox. The receptors on the outside of the prostate have receptors have an affinity for estrogen-like material. So when we detox men of estrogens, it helps their prostate quite a bit. So I think it has more to do with the acidity levels, certain deficiencies like zinc and some key minerals when it comes to prostate health, but even more so the actual inflammatory reaction around the prostate, which is reactive to estrogens. We see it also with like people who have cyclists who actually have pressure there. So there's a lot of different contributors, but hormones could be in play, and there could be a downstream effect in the whole acid part of the body being also put in play there. So
Hmm. I'm going to
that's a tricky one, but yes, the answer
Yeah,
is yes.
appreciate that. I'm going to throw one more question before breaks. I think it could be a yes, no. But this woman says, interesting, I use flaxseed daily, and she's postmenopausal. She's on a bioidentical hormones. Recent blood work showed low testosterone. Should she decrease her flaxseed consumption?
If recent blood work showed low testosterone and you're doing the other things, then yes, that is something that would be in play. So,
Interesting.
and that's why,
And
and I love flax seeds. Flax seeds are good for a lot of women, but again, certain things in balance.
yeah. And that's the thing too. We want to remember that, just as men sometimes think the hormone conversation is only for women, women might think the testosterone conversation is only for men. But I guess we do have a couple minutes here. What are some signs that a woman might be low in testosterone and might need some additional supplemental help?
Same as the guys. So low sex drive, low energy, and some brain clarity is another one. So increased fogginess in the brain, and then one of the weird ones is just a complete inability to want to use your muscles. So where
Wow.
you just you think about going to the gym and exercising, and you're like, nope, I don't want to do that. And it's just like you have like this complete um, turn off to strengthening and using your muscles. So that's one. And so we're not talking about a lot of testosterone. Women need very, very little, but being deficient has like these big problems and challenges. So that's one
So
weird one that I've seen with a lot of my patients.
a lot of women wonder, because especially, postmenopausal, they've heard, all the scary risk factors around HRTs, hormone replacement therapies, and feel like it's too big of a risk, blood clot, stroke, that kind of a thing. I thought I'd heard recently that some of that research is being disputed, and that you're actually better off to have some, not too much, but a little some of these things present. What are your thoughts? Like for someone who's postmenopausal who feels like they've got those symptoms, could a tiny bit of testosterone be helpful, or does that still, are they kind of helping one problem and creating a risk for another?
Great question because I've actually reversed my opinion on this in the last 5 years. So if we had a world that was not so destroyed by humans and it was how God created us, we wouldn't need hormone replacement. But because we have all of these other things coming at us, it has depleted our natural ability to make and balance our hormones. So now I really do feel a lot of people need some level of support when it comes to their hormones. Now, here's the caveat. The research that came out that was showing that hormone replacement therapy was bad was based off of estrogen that was man-made, synthetic. So if you do hormone replacement, it has to be bioidentical hormone number one, not synthetic man-made hormones. So that's the first thing. And I do feel like there's some benefit because we're seeing right now as stress has increased, and in a lot of we're treating a lot of people with long haul COVID and vaccine injuries that need hormones to actually help their immune system overcome what happened.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. All right. We're going to pause here. I'm going to start tackling more of your questions. I think I had a few others about hormone replacement. Oh, I know one I want to not forget about. Somebody help me remember to talk to Dr. Troy about melatonin and things that hinder melatonin production. How melatonin is a hormone. What do we need to know about that? What good is it for? And what if you can't sleep without a melatonin supplement? So we got lots of questions for Dr. Troy, which is good, but I'm going to tackle some of yours as well. Don't go away. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks so much for tuning into Susie Larson Live, having a really interesting conversation with Dr. Troy about hormones. And I think we're going to spend the whole hour on this topic. We'll grab a few other questions in here as well. But, our guest, Alex, who asked earlier, he uses flax milk on a regular basis. And he wondered about, should he be concerned about his testosterone being low? And then he said, I've told several doctors about my inability to want to lift weights, which I can't explain why I don't lift weights anymore. And he said it must be due to the level of flax milk that I ingest daily. Isn't it? This is why these conversations are so important, because that might be an easy fix for you. So amazing. Doc, this question came in from Mamie. She says, if there's a family history of breast and endometrial cancer, can you take hormone replacement?
That's a good question. The answer is sometimes. So there are very few people that I trust to help navigate through that scenario. Um, but it's possible. So there's a lot of things you have to watch for because it's not just if that happens, there's a problem with your estrogen. So a lot of times you have to make sure you're detoxifying the estrogen properly. So it can be done properly if the other components that set up the breast cancer in the first place have been addressed. If it's an estrogen induced breast cancer, some breast cancers come from other problems like inflammatory breast cancers. We have a lot of breast cancers that we've seen come from like tooth infections from root canals that people didn't know about. Doing thermography, we catch a lot of things like that. And vitamin D deficiency combined with iodine deficiency is a recipe for fibrocystic breasts as well as breast cancer. So it kind of depends on what set it up, but it can be done. So it, I
It's
wouldn't go see anyone who isn't willing to pay attention to the other factors. So generally speaking, people who do functional medicine or people who are trained in detoxification and estrogen dominance, uh, that's a different story. I would trust them. Our
that,
PA that we hired from Oklahoma, Rochelle, is brilliant, and she will navigate things, and she'll only take on certain patients in that scenario because the circumstances have to be right.
yeah. I was going to say why I'm such a big proponent as a non-doctor who plays one on radio, but a proponent for labs because you can watch then. I mean, you pay
Yeah.
attention to what's working, what your body's metabolizing, what your body's reacting to. I just, and to think that maybe small doses of something could be game changing for you, but you keep an eye on how your body's responding is so important. Okay, I've got to throw in a couple of random questions that don't connect to hormones. Well, maybe they do. I just don't know. One is a question about a gallbladder issues, and how do you cleanse your gallbladder?
Ooh, so this is an interesting question because gallbladder is really just a storage for bile. Bile is used to help digest food and fats, and so it emulsifies the fats. In fact, there's a lot of people with bile duct and bile problems and gallbladder issues. And so if you eat a lot of fried food, you can have gallbladder issues. But even if you're like dosed with estrogens, extra environmental toxins, your bile can become thick. So intermittent fasting helps thin the bile, as does making sure you're staying hydrated. So those two things really help thin the bile. One of the ways to help detoxify or cleanse the bile, the gallbladder in particular, and I do recommend you do this under the supervision of someone who knows what they're doing. A lot of chiropractors have done this in the past, but you can actually uh, do a component of fasting, and you consume a lot of apples, even apple juice, to thin the bile, because apples also help with that. And then you drink a cup of olive oil,
Whew.
a full cup with a little bit of lemon juice in it, and it'll cause the gallbladder to kind of violently contract. Now, here's the problem. If you have gallstones in there, you could actually cause the gallstone to get stuck in the bile duct. That's why it's got to be done under supervision. So do not do this at home by yourself. If you want to do it by yourself, stick with the apples and doing an apple cleanse where you're just doing intermittent fasting and do apples for 3 days
Wow.
straight. That
Wow.
that's that's one good way.
Interesting. Okay, another random question, then I'm going to get back to hormones. Uh, this dear person says, I know bacteria causes armpit odor. How do you detox your armpits and possibly apple cider vinegar? Question mark. So, what do you say? I don't
Yeah,
think it's
to
about detoxing your armpits. I think isn't what's happening
right.
in your armpits of what's happening in your body?
Correct. So the armpits are just the exit strategy for the odor. The odor is actually internal, and the bacteria imbalance is not in the armpits per se. If it is, then that's more of a skin condition, and so that there are some topical. You can do apple cider vinegar and stuff for the skin condition part of it, but most times it is coming from the digestive system and the lymph. So that is almost always a diet scenario. We used to have a patient, not patient, sorry. She worked at the clinic. Her name was Megan, and she won't mind me sharing this if she's listening. But she was a vegan. We remember it because she was Megan, the vegan from Megan, and she was an awesome human being, and she ate so clean. It was the most impressive thing I'd ever seen. But occasionally she would cheat on her diet by having some protein or something like that. But we could
Mm,
tell because when she ate clean, she didn't need any type of deodorant. But when she cheated on her diet, her body wasn't quite used to it and didn't know how to metabolize it properly. And so we could actually smell when she had had meat. So
mm,
it was very, very interesting. It helped change my opinion because it was all about how her bacteria in her gut was unable to break down the meat properly.
Interesting. All right. So the person who's got the smelly armpits, truly might want to look at their diet right? Because a lot of times
Yeah.
it's processed foods, fried foods, high sugar, that kind of a thing. And if they go into detox mode and just start cleaning up their diet, drinking a lot of water, sweating, I would imagine sweating's probably really good. Their whole body, would you
It's
say?
good to sweat,
Yep.
but you want to
Yep.
treat the most likely they have SIBO or SIFO, the small intestinal fungal overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth. Very, very common. We even get it after taking antibiotics, but there's going to be some level of digestive disruption in 90% of those cases.
Wow, interesting. Okay, one more question before our break here. We've talked about this on past shows, but it fits in this conversation that you say one of the ways women are carrying excess estrogen is on their hips. If you've got excessive weight on your hips, and if you've got excessive weight on the belly, it's often cortisol fat, where your adrenal, you're overstimulating the. Would the belly fat be also equally true for men as well? Cortisol belly fat, is that a thing for men
Yeah,
as well?
absolutely. And so there's a way to actually assess different areas of where you hold fat tells you what hormones um, can be off. So I'll go through the little list off the top of my head. I'll do my best with it, but your fat tells us a lot. For example, the first place of fat loss or gain is the chin. So that's just something that's overall interesting to know. And you lose fat in the cheeks first. So the cheeks are a good sign of just how much fat in general. Triceps area over our triceps is a relative area related to testosterone and estrogen levels combined. So if you're deficient in testosterone, the back of the arm, you get that little flappy arms can be a problem. But sometimes we see that with estrogen too, or the combination. The biceps is related just to the testosterone too. So that's one of the reasons why low testosterone, people don't want to lift weights because their bicep, they start putting fat where muscle is.
Hmm.
Chest is also associated with estrogen and the thighs, like you said. Under the armpit, this doesn't have to do with the older part of it, but if you start to develop fat kind of under that armpit area, that is a really strong indicator of thyroid hormone dysfunction or a need for heavy metal detox. So that's another weird one, but heavy metals really can affect the thyroid. So it's kind of the same thing. And then on our back below our shoulder blades is generally related to blood sugar, insulin problems. That's where we store fat. And then one of my favorite ones, because it's you think it's rare, but when we start to get fat in the low back, that is a sign of gut dysbiosis and toxins in the bowels.
Wow. Okay, we need to take a break. When we come back, I just want to touch on calcium glucarate, I think it is.
Yep.
It's a supplement that can help you pull out the toxic estrogens in your body. And it's some of what's in there is broccoli. So broccoli might be a great thing to eat if you think you're carrying a lot of excessive toxic estrogen in your hips. Eat broccoli. But we'll talk about that and melatonin, and we'll try to tackle a few more questions. I'm hoping to accomplish a lot in about 4 minutes. So hang in there. We'll be back in a minute. This is Susie Larson, host of Susie Larson Live. Maybe you have a loved one that you've been praying for years, and they still haven't trusted Jesus. Or maybe you have a loved one who once had a vibrant faith, but has since walked away. If this is true for you, know this: you're not alone. God sees you, He loves you, and He knows about the heartache you feel. And we care about it too. I've recorded 15 audio clips to encourage your soul. Text the word HEART to 877-933-2484. Thanks so much for tuning into Susie Larson Live. Dr. Troy Spurrill is my guest today. He's CEO and founder of Synapse Center for Health and Healing, located in Eagan, Minnesota. Now, we've got friends listening from all over the world, and this is our chance every month to just talk about health and the healing process. I kind of wondered if this topic was going to take us through the whole show, and there's quite a few questions we didn't get to, but we've got a extra recording scheduled with Dr. Troy. I think in a few weeks we're going to record an extra show, so we'll grab all of those questions and get as many of them answered as we can. Talking about hormones, This gentleman writes in, so in men, if you cannot reduce the stress right now, you're having issues with belly fat, what can a person do as far as diet and exercise? And I'm wondering, I think you and I talked about this at the clinic. There's also a supplement you could possibly take if what you're dealing with is cortisol belly fat. It's good to know that that's what your issue is, but maybe just speak to it as you'd like.
Yeah, the top thing for guys is to start using their muscles. Insulin resistance is going to be a part of that conversation. There's a whole category that this falls into, and it's called metabolic syndrome. Very common. If left unaddressed, it turns into cardiovascular disease and dysfunction. So that is first and foremost. Good, deep, restorative sleep. Weight-bearing exercise are the two things as far as lifestyle that are game changers. You can also look at two different herbals. Berberine helps quite a bit, as does ashwagandha, just from an herbal perspective from for that scenario. And when it comes to the actual just the stress scenario, just staying hydrated and doing your best to navigate the cravings that come with that. So when women have stress, well, we all crave sugar and salt. And so when you have stress as a guy, one of my best things to do is they have these electrolyte drinks called LMNT, and they're salty potassium chloride drinks, and they take away your sugar cravings. They restore your electrolytes. So it's kind of like a Gatorade, but a healthy version of it.
No sugar.
And yes, they
Love
taste
it.
salty,
So good.
but
Yeah.
they take away the sugar cravings.
Love those so much. And I'll just add this little thing in there. If yours is belly fat from cortisol and your adrenals are overcharged, laughter, it's such an
Yes.
important thing. Really does help release stress. And deep breathing. Those are things you can do. Even if your schedule's not lightening up, take moments, deep breathe, go for walks, watch something that makes you belly laugh. And I love that strategy on the LMNT. Those are the letters, LMNT. You can find that on Amazon. I love that stuff. If you have high blood pressure, I think you want to be careful with that. But otherwise,
Yeah.
right? Right. Okay.
And one of the ways to find out if you're stressed is what you're craving. So for
Yeah.
the salty, we're all kind of the same. It's potato chips, even salty nuts, things like that. But for sugar, men and women are different. So women tend to crave chocolate. So if you find yourself craving chocolate, great sign that your stress is out of balance. Men, their sugar of choice is alcohol. Now, if they don't drink, then it's usually the sweets. It can be chocolate, it can be ice cream, it can be baked goods, it can be bread. So all of those are general cravings. So if you find yourself craving these types of things, very, very important to just take a step back and realize really there's a stress that needs to be managed versus an actual alcoholic beverage or a food that you're going to try to do to temporarily quench that, because that's what ends up driving more of the fat being stored around the belly.
Doc, I wonder if we could, if right after the show, if you could text Ange or send us a note on the labs that you want men or women to take as it relates to hormones. And friends, I know not all traditional doctors' offices are going to do these tests for you, but I do want to tell you there are some you can order online. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Thorne has a lot of home tests that I have found. I did one on my gut. I was amazed. I got 24 pages of information. It was a home test, and it was very worth it. But I mean, so there are things you can do. There are home tests you can do to get a pretty good readout on what your numbers look like, right? I mean, if you can't get to a functional med doc and you can't afford that,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll have you, if you don't mind, just writing down the tests we should look for, and we'll put those in the show notes. And then, friend, just do some homework. Try to get to a local functional med doctor's office and get these labs done. And you know, and if you're not able to do that, maybe visit the Thorne website or others and see what you can do. But take some active participation and do what you can and trust God to bring some provision. But I think information is really important when you see what your specific numbers are, and then you make decisions based on what you finally know. And Doc, our time is up, and we never talked about melatonin. And I also wanted to ask you, what are some ways for us to keep our hormones balanced, just lifestyle choices? So I think I'll carry those over to our next show, and we'll talk about sleep and a few other things, and we'll gather up these questions as well that we weren't able to get to today. So hopefully, I expect you to remember all of that. So will you?
Yeah, I'm on it.
You know who's going to remember this is Angie. She's got it.
Yes,
So
that's what. Yes.
anyway, yeah, we're both like, yeah, okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Such a great conversation, Doc. And I pray God redeems your time that you gave to us.
Thanks so much.
And friend, thank you for tuning in. I pray you found some encouragement here today. It goes back to how you manage stress, the story you tell yourself. If you meditate and pray and sink yourself into the roots of the soil of God's love, sink your roots deep, where you learn to live loved, every choice towards healing and wholeness matters. And there are things you can do that don't cost you a penny. So start doing them and see what happens. We'll meet you back here next time. Thank you for listening to this conversation from Susie Larson Live. These conversations are available because of your support. You can become a supporter now at myfaithradio.com. Please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes, and then share it with friends so together we can all have a deeper life in Christ.